lot of times if you wouldn't have been our dad, we'd have quit before you had a chance to fire us. Believe me.
Jacob Landry is not just another name from the reality TV series Swamp People. He is a living embodiment of Southern grit, family legacy, and quiet resilience. From his early years in the Louisiana bayou to the spotlight of television and the heavy shadows cast by fame and tragedy, Jacob's journey is one that deserves to be told not as a list of events, but as a deeply human story, one of passion, loyalty, heartbreak, and ultimately, transformation. Born on December 27, 1983, in the small, tight-knit town of Pierre Part, Louisiana, Jacob was introduced to the swamp long before he ever held a gator line. His playground was the marsh, his lullaby, the hum of insects, and the soft call of birds over still water. He was raised by Troy Landry, a man who would go on to become the legendary King of the Swamp, and by Bernita Landry, the quiet force that kept the family grounded. From an early age, Jacob absorbed the rhythms of swamp life. While other children played with toys and went to soccer practice, Jacob was out on the water, learning how to bait hooks, track animal signs, and steer boats through narrow bayou. His father, Troy, was a towering figure, not just in stature, but in presence. Troy's deep voice, signature catchphrases, and fearless approach to gator hunting made him an instant star when Swamp People aired in 2010. But behind every booming command and television moment was Jacob, quiet and steady, steering the boat, keeping the equipment in check, and ensuring every hunt was done right. He wasn't loud or flashy. He didn't crave the camera. That's precisely why viewers loved him. He was authentic, real, a man who seemed more concerned with doing the job right than with becoming a celebrity. As the show gained popularity, fans began to see more of Jacob. He grew into his role, not just as Troy's right hand, but as a leader in his own right. His demeanor on camera, calm, methodical, respectful, earned him a devoted fan base. Jacob represented something rare in modern television: humility and tradition in an increasingly sensationalized world. He taught viewers that strength didn't have to be loud, and that true leadership often came in the form of service. Still, the life of a reality TV star came with pressure. Fame, while flattering, also exposed Jacob to intense scrutiny. What was once a private life spent in the swamp became public property. Fans wanted to know everything: his routines, his family, his thoughts. Jacob, who found peace in nature's quiet, now faced the unrelenting noise of social media, press appearances, and public expectation. Yet, even as the cameras rolled, Jacob stayed grounded. He lived by the values his parents instilled in him: honesty, respect for nature, and the importance of family. Off camera, he found his sanctuary in his wife Lindsay and their two sons, Ridge and Casey. Lindsay, though rarely seen on television, is the rock of the Landry household. Their relationship, built on mutual respect and deep understanding, is the anchor Jacob returns to after every long day in the swamp or under the camera's eye. Raising his sons, Jacob has taken the same approach his father did with him: teaching through experience. He brings Ridge and Queso into the swamp, shows them how to read the water, how to move with the wind, and how to respect the land. For Jacob, it's not just about preserving a profession, it's about instilling values that will guide them through life, whether they become hunters or choose another path entirely. But life for the Landrys took a darker turn in 2024 when an anonymous tip led to an investigation by Louisiana wildlife authorities. Surveillance revealed illegal hunting practices in Lake Powell, and the man at the center of it was none other than Troy Landry. The same man who had built a reputation for integrity was now facing charges for illegal tagging and mishandling of gators. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Troy's boat was seized, he faced legal penalties, and the family's reputation was called into question. For Jacob, this was more than just a scandal. It was a personal tragedy. He had spent years upholding the family's image, emphasizing the importance of ethical hunting, even encouraging fellow hunters to respect the land and the law. Now, that image was tarnished. To make matters worse, critics began turning their gaze on Jacob. Was he complicit? Did he know? Was Swamp People just a dramatized version of a lifestyle meant for show? Animal rights groups accused the Landrys of turning nature into a spectacle. They claimed that the show was staged, that the dangers were exaggerated, and that the family was glamorizing violence. Jacob, who had always prided himself on authenticity, was now caught in a whirlwind of suspicion and doubt. Yet through it all, he remained silent, not out of guilt, but out of a desire to protect his family. His social media went quiet. His appearances on the show dwindled. The man who once stood steady on a boat now found himself trying to steady a family legacy on the verge of collapse. But Jacob's silence was not surrender. It was a decision, one informed by pain, wisdom, and perspective. Years earlier, in 2012, tragedy had struck the Swamp People family when Mitchell Gist, a beloved cast member, died suddenly of a heart attack on the Bell River. Mitchell's death was a wake-up call. It was a reminder that the swamp, while beautiful, was also merciless. There are no second takes in nature, no safety nets. For Jacob, who had a wife and children waiting at home, the loss was deeply personal. It changed the way he looked at the risks he took every day. The suddenness of Mitchell's passing hit hard, not just because it was unexpected, but because it was a stark reminder of how fragile life can be in an environment as wild and unpredictable as the Louisiana bayou. Mitchell had been a symbol of everything the show celebrated: grit, independence, and raw authenticity. To lose him was to lose part of that spirit. And for Jacob, who had always hunted with purpose and pride, it added a layer of gravity to every trip out on the water. From that moment on, Jacob began to change, not outwardly perhaps, but internally. He grew more reflective, more measured in his approach. He didn't stop hunting, but he hunted smarter. He trained younger family members and deckhands more thoroughly, insisted on safety measures that others might have seen as overcautious, and made it a point to cherish moments with his wife, Lindsay, and their children. The swamp, once a place of adrenaline and tradition, became just as much a reminder of mortality and responsibility. Mitchell's death also fostered a deeper bond among the Swamp People cast and crew. They weren't just co-stars, they were a tight-knit family navigating both fame and danger together. Jacob, known for his quiet strength, stepped into a subtle leadership role. He offered comfort where needed, wisdom where it counted, and space when others needed time to grieve or reflect. Through it all, Jacob never lost sight of what mattered: coming home safe, honoring those who came before him, and ensuring that the legacy of bayou living would carry on, not just through television, but through the lives of his children and community. Jacob Landry had grown up in the wilds of Louisiana, learning the ways of the swamp from his legendary father, Troy Landry. Gator hunting wasn't just a job, it was a way of life, passed down through generations. But the death of Mitchell, coupled with his growing responsibilities as a father and husband, forced Jacob to reassess what truly mattered. He began to see the hunt not just as a tradition, but as a dangerous game, one where a single misstep could mean disaster. And unlike reality TV, real life doesn't allow for edits. Off camera, Jacob became more cautious, more strategic. He began mentoring younger hunters, emphasizing safety and respect for the swamp over bravado. His decision to sometimes step back from the spotlight wasn't about fear. It was about legacy. He wanted to be around to teach his sons the same skills his father taught him, but also to ensure they lived to pass them on. Mitchell's passing had also bonded the Swamp People cast more closely. They knew they were more than television personalities. They were real people, living real dangers. Jacob often spoke of Mitchell with quiet reverence, crediting him with teaching everyone the importance of humility in the face of nature. Though viewers sometimes wondered why Jacob wasn't always front and center, those who knew him understood. His silence spoke volume. It was the silence of a man who had faced loss, who had found strength in reflection, and who understood that true courage wasn't in chasing every alligator, but in knowing which battles were worth the risk. Jacob Landry never needed to be the loudest voice in the room. His leadership came through action, measured, steady, and unshakably grounded in purpose. While others sought attention, Jacob sought meaning. He understood that life on the swamp was not a performance. It was a responsibility. Each decision, each hunt carried weight, not just for himself, but for his family, his crew, and the land he calls home. Over the years, Jacob took on more than just the role of hunter or television personality. He became a behind-the-scenes force on Swamp People, helping coordinate logistics, safety protocols, and even contributing to episode development. His practical mindset and deep knowledge of the terrain made him a trusted presence among cast and crew alike. He was never interested in the fame. It was the storytelling, the culture, and the way of life that he wanted to preserve. Beyond the show, Jacob embraced entrepreneurship, managing family-run businesses tied to Louisiana's outdoor lifestyle. From seafood distribution to outdoor gear, he turned his lifelong experience into opportunity, not to chase riches, but to provide for his family in a sustainable, grounded way. He also remained heavily involved in community outreach, quietly helping with storm recovery efforts, supporting local schools, and attending conservation fundraisers to protect the swamp he so deeply cherishes. His bond with his father, Troy, continued to evolve as well. Once the young deckhand learning the ropes, Jacob became a partner and equal, a son who stood shoulder to shoulder with the man who taught him everything and who now passed on those same lessons to his own sons. In a world often driven by ego and noise, Jacob Landry stands out precisely because of what he withholds. His silence is not absence, it's presence, the kind that listens deeply, acts purposefully, and endures long after the spotlight fades. And so, Jacob began to step back, not because he was giving up, but because he was evolving. In 2015, he tried his hand in a different world, acting and helping direct a small indie horror film titled Paranormal Extremes: Text Messages from the Dead. It wasn't a blockbuster, but it wasn't meant to be. It was a chance to explore creativity, to break from routine, and to see what life outside the swamp could look like. In time, Jacob also began leading swamp tours, real, grounded, educational journeys through the wetland. These weren't theatrical productions. They were honest conversations about ecology, conservation, and tradition. Visitors got to see not just the thrill of the hunt, but the beauty and fragility of the ecosystem. Jacob's goal was simple: to teach, to pass down wisdom not just to his sons, but to anyone willing to listen. Through partnerships with environmental groups, Jacob began advocating for the protection of Louisiana's wetlands. He spoke about the dangers of erosion, pollution, and climate change. For Jacob, hunting was never just about sport. It was about balance. Maintaining that balance meant standing up for the very land that had raised him. Today, Jacob still appears on Swamp People from time to time. His cameos feel less like performances and more like reunions. When he shows up, fans take notice. They see not just a hunter, but a symbol of strength, of family, of quiet, unwavering integrity. Despite everything, the fame, the controversy, the heartbreak, Jacob has never lost sight of what matters most: love, loyalty, legacy. At home, he is still the man teaching his sons how to hold a fishing rod, how to tie a line, and how to walk through life with humility. He is still the son who looks up to his father. Even if that father has faltered, he is still the husband who finds peace in Lindsay's presence. And he is still the quiet boy from Pierre Part, standing at the edge of the water, listening to what the swamp has to say. Jacob Landry has always understood that celebrity is fleeting, but character is lasting. While the cameras may have brought him into living rooms across the country, it's what happened after the spotlight dimmed that truly defined him. He didn't chase endorsements or use his platform to build a brand. Instead, he stayed true to his roots. Whether it's fixing an outboard motor in the early morning or helping his neighbors prepare for hurricane season, Jacob remains a pillar of his community, quiet, capable, dependable. Over the years, he has used his experience not only to lead successful gator hunts, but to mentor younger hunters entering the dangerous trade. He's passed along practical skills, but more importantly, he's taught them how to respect the swamp, the same way his father taught him. It's a relationship, not a conquest. The land provides, but it also demands reverence. For Jacob, every outing is a lesson, every return home a blessing. He's also become a strong voice in conservation. Having witnessed firsthand the changes in Louisiana's delicate ecosystem, from rising water levels to disappearing wildlife, Jacob has quietly supported efforts to protect the land for future generations. He knows that one day his sons will stand where he stands now, casting lines into waters that hold not just fish, but family history. And when the cameras aren't rolling, Jacob still finds comfort in the simplicity of swamp life. The hush of cypress trees in the wind, the ripple of water under a flat-bottom boat, and the rhythmic song of frogs at dusk. In that sacred stillness, he hears more than just the wild. He hears where he comes from and who he still wants to be. In the end, Jacob Landry's story isn't just about alligators and television. It's about how a man can be shaped by nature, tested by fame, and yet still remain true to himself. His journey reminds us that legacy is not about being perfect. It's about staying honest, holding fast, and knowing when it's time to speak, and when it's time to simply listen. Born and raised in the close-knit community of Pierre Part, Louisiana, Jacob grew up in the shadow of cypress trees and bayou waters, where lessons were learned early and survival was a family affair. He inherited not just his father Troy's grit and skill, but also his quiet resilience. Long before the cameras ever rolled, Jacob was already an expert waterman, navigating narrow channels, tracking gators, and understanding the delicate rhythms of life in the swamp. When Swamp People launched in 2010, it catapulted the Landry family into national fame. Jacob, initially soft-spoken and camera-shy, soon became a fan favorite for his calm under pressure and his unshakable loyalty to his family. But behind the scenes, Jacob was juggling much more, being a father, a husband, a business owner, and a man determined to keep tradition alive while adapting to a rapidly changing world. He eventually stepped into the role of boat captain and co-producer, helping to shape how the Landry family's story was told. More than just a hunter, Jacob became a storyteller and ambassador for Cajun culture, showing audiences the values of hard work, respect for nature, and family unity. Jacob also took on new responsibilities off-camera. From hurricane recovery efforts to mentoring local youth, he used his platform to give back. He quietly became involved in wetland preservation efforts, advocating for the protection of the disappearing marshes that define southern Louisiana. To him, the swamp isn't a set or a backdrop. It's home, and it's worth fighting for. Now, as a father passing down the same knowledge once given to him, Jacob's legacy is clear. It's not about loud victories or flashy fame. It's about living with purpose, leading with heart, and letting the swamp's wisdom guide every step. That's the story Jacob Landry continues to write, one silent sunrise at a time. So while the world may continue to ask where Jacob Landry is, those who really know him already have the answer. He's exactly where he's always been, home, in the swamp, living by the values that made him who he is, quietly, steadily, proudly. He's not chasing headlines or Instagram likes. He's chasing sunrises over still water, the splash of a gator tail in the distance, the laughter of his children as they learn the ways of the land. Jacob has always measured success differently, not in ratings or red carpets, but in how well a day's work was done, how safely his crew returned, and how much of his heritage he could pass on. In a world that often demands noise, Jacob Landry's quiet consistency is its own kind of rebellion. He's part of a dying breed, someone who doesn't just talk about tradition, but lives it, breathes it, and protects it. When storms roll in, he doesn't panic. He prepares. When others speculate, he listens. And when life tests him, he leans into his roots, finding strength in the same waters that raised him. There's a kind of poetry to Jacob's life now. His days might not be scripted for television anymore, but they're no less meaningful. Whether he's teaching his boys to bait a line, fixing a flatboat, or checking traps before dawn, he's writing a different kind of story, one that doesn't need a camera to be worth telling. To the fans still wondering if he'll return to the spotlight, the answer may come quietly, in his own time. But Jacob doesn't need the world to find him. He never left. He's on the bayou, where his boots still sink into familiar mud, where his name still carries weight, and where legacy isn't something you talk about. It's something you live, one season, one lesson, one sunrise at a time.